There is a moment that so many people quietly wait for, a moment they may never admit out loud. The moment when the person who once overlooked them, dismissed them, or treated them as replaceable suddenly seems to realize that they mattered all along. Maybe you have imagined it. The message that arrives out of nowhere, the softened voice, the sudden interest in your life. The look that says for the first time that they finally understand what they had. And if you have lived through a relationship with someone who showed strong narcissistic patterns, you may have wondered something painful and very human. What happens when they finally realize I was important? Will they change? Will they see me clearly? Will everything I hoped for finally arrive just when I stopped expecting it? Today, we are going to explore that question honestly, not with fantasy, not with false hope, but with psychological clarity and compassion. Because understanding what actually happens when a narcissistic person realizes you are important can protect you in ways that wishing never could. Before we go deeper, if this is the kind of conversation that helps you feel understood, take a moment to subscribe. This channel exists to help you understand these patterns, rebuild trust in yourself, and heal in a way that is grounded and real. Subscribing is a quiet way of choosing your own clarity. So let us begin with something that may feel uncomfortable at first. When a narcissistic person realizes that someone is important, that realization does not automatically become love. It does not automatically become growth. It does not automatically become accountability or empathy or change. This is one of the most important truths to understand, and it is one of the hardest to accept when your heart is still involved. Because in a healthy emotional world, realizing that someone matters leads to gratitude. It leads to care. It leads to a desire to protect that person and to treat them well. We assume that recognition and love travel together. We assume that if they finally see our value, everything else will follow. But narcissistic dynamics often do not work that way. There is a crucial difference between valuing a person and valuing what that person provides. And this distinction sits at the center of everything we are about to explore. When someone genuinely values you, they care about your inner world, your feelings, your well-being, your growth, even when it takes you further from them. When someone values what you provide, they care about how you make them feel, your attention, your reassurance, your admiration, the stability you offered, the emotional labor you carried, the sense of security your presence created. From the outside, these two things can look almost identical, especially in the beginning, but over time they behave very differently. One expands when you thrive, the other tightens when you begin to slip away. So when a narcissistic person realizes you are important, the honest question is not whether they noticed your value. The honest question is what exactly they are afraid of losing. Because in many narcissistic relationship patterns, a partner is not just a person. They are a source of validation, of admiration, of attention, of emotional regulation when everything inside feels unstable, a source of control, of familiarity, of status, of predictable access, a quiet psychological anchor that keeps a fragile inner world from tipping over. And when that source begins to disappear, something can shift very suddenly. This is why so many people notice a dramatic change in behavior right at the moment they finally start to pull away. The moment they stop reaching out, the moment they begin healing, the moment they become emotionally unavailable in the way they used to be endlessly available. Suddenly the attention returns, the affection reappears. There are promises, there are apologies that sound different from before. There is a new curiosity about your life, your day, your feelings, the very things that once seemed invisible to them. There may be jealousy, there may be idealization, where you are suddenly described as the most important person they have ever known. There may be emotional pressure, guilt, nostalgia, long messages about the past, reminders of good memories, small gestures of warmth arriving just often enough to reopen your heart. And here is where it becomes psychologically delicate, because these behaviors feel like proof. They feel like the change you always wanted. They feel like the recognition you waited for. But feeling like proof and being proof are not the same thing. None of these behaviors on their own demonstrate genuine transformation. They may simply demonstrate that a person has realized they are losing access to something that mattered to them. And realizing you might lose access to someone is very different from understanding the harm you caused them. This is the difference between a temporary behavioral adjustment and a sustained change in character. A behavioral adjustment can happen in a moment. It can be triggered by fear, by loss, by the sudden awareness that you are slipping away. It can look intense, emotional, even sincere, but it is often tied to a goal, and the goal is frequently to restore access rather than to repair harm. A change in character is something else entirely. It is slow, it is uncomfortable. It requires a person to sit with the reality of what they did without rushing to be forgiven. It requires accountability that does not depend on an audience. It requires empathy that continues even when it brings no reward. So, how would you actually know the difference? Genuine change tends to show itself through consistency, not intensity, through accountability that includes specifics, not vague apologies, through respect for your boundaries, even when respecting them costs the other person something, through a willingness to hear difficult feedback without collapsing into defensiveness or turning the conversation back onto you, through responsibility for harm that does not quietly transform into a story about how they were actually the one who suffered. And most importantly, genuine change reveals itself over time. This is why dramatic words should never be evaluated in isolation from repeated behavior. Words can arrive in a single passionate night. Behavior has to show up again and again on ordinary days when no one is watching, when there is nothing to gain. Anyone can say the right thing in the moment they are afraid of losing you. Fewer people can live the right thing across months once the fear has faded and the old comfort has returned. Now let us talk about what is happening on their side when the connection begins to fade, not to excuse it, but to understand it, because understanding protects you. When a narcissistic person loses access to someone who provided attention, reassurance, emotional stability, and validation, it can feel destabilizing in a very particular way. Not necessarily because they miss you as a full and separate human being, but because they miss what your presence did for their inner world. You may have been the person who calmed the storm, the one who absorbed the moods, the one who reflected back a flattering image, the one who made an unstable internal world feel a little more manageable. Losing that can create urgency, but urgency is not insight. This is one of the most important sentences you may hear today. Urgency is not insight. A person can feel a powerful, desperate pull to bring you back without ever developing any real understanding of why you left. They can feel the absence intensely while remaining completely unaware of the harm that created it. And this leads to a set of distinctions that can quietly change your life. There is a difference between missing someone and understanding the harm done to them. There is a difference between fear of losing access and genuine remorse. There is a difference between wanting someone back and becoming capable of treating them differently. Missing you is about their emptiness. Understanding the harm is about your pain. These are not the same, and one does not guarantee the other. Let me speak directly to you now. If you are the one wondering whether this person has finally realized your worth, I understand why that question lives in you. After being overlooked, minimized, or treated as replaceable, the idea that they might finally see you can feel like justice, like closure, like the missing piece that would make all the pain mean something. But here is the quiet trap inside that hope. Waiting for their recognition keeps you emotionally tied to the very person you are trying to heal from. As long as your peace depends on them finally understanding what they lost, you have handed them the key to your recovery. You have made your healing conditional on someone else's awakening. And the most powerful shift does not happen when they realize your value. It happens when you stop making your healing depend on it. Let us pause here for a moment. If something in this is landing in a place words do not usually reach, consider subscribing. This channel is here to walk with you through understanding these patterns, rebuilding self-trust, learning to set boundaries that hold, and recovering your sense of self. You are not here to be entertained. You are here to heal. Subscribing simply keeps this conversation close when you need it. Now let us talk about boundaries, because this is where understanding turns into protection. A boundary is not a punishment. A boundary is not a strategy to make someone chase you. A boundary is simply a clear line that defines how you will be treated and what you will do to protect yourself if that line is not respected. And boundaries do something quietly revealing. They show you whether a person respects your autonomy or only respects your usefulness. When you set a boundary with someone who genuinely respects you, they may not like it, but they honor it. When you set a boundary with someone who mainly valued their access to you, the boundary itself can become the thing they push against. This is why consistent boundaries can change a relationship dynamic even when they do not change the other person. Because the boundary reorganizes the space between you. It removes the automatic access. It ends the endless availability. And in doing so, it reveals what was really there. A narcissistic person may respond to boundaries in many ways, with increased pressure, with sudden charm, with anger, with guilt, with withdrawal designed to make you anxious, with renewed attempts to regain the access they lost. And here's what you must hold on to. None of these reactions are proof of love. Intensity is not love. Pursuit is not love. Jealousy is not love. A strong reaction to losing you is not the same as a genuine capacity to treat you well. This is why you learn to watch patterns instead of moments. A single tender message is a moment. A single tearful apology is a moment. A single perfect evening is a moment. These moments can be real, and they can still tell you almost nothing about what tomorrow holds. Patterns are different. Patterns are what happens repeatedly, over time. When the initial fear has faded, and there is no reward for good behavior. Patterns are the truth that moments try to hide. Real change is measured over time. Not over a night, not over a week, over the long, unglamorous stretch where a person either does or does not show up as someone different. Now we have to talk about something that makes all of this so much harder to see clearly. Trauma bonding and intermittent reinforcement. When a relationship has swung between warmth and coldness, between affection and withdrawal, between closeness and distance, something happens inside the nervous system. The inconsistency itself becomes a kind of glue. The unpredictability makes the good moments feel unusually intense because your whole being has learned to crave them, to wait for them, to feel relief when they finally arrive. This is why a person who has lived through inconsistent attention may interpret a small sign of warmth as evidence of profound transformation. When you have been starved of consistency, a crumb can feel like a feast. A single act of kindness can feel like proof that everything is finally about to be different. Please hear this gently. That feeling is real, but it is not reliable evidence. The intensity you feel when warmth returns after coldness is not a measurement of their change. It is often a measurement of how long you went without it. So slow down. Give yourself permission to slow down. You do not have to decide anything in the heat of a hopeful moment. You are allowed to observe. You are allowed to wait and watch whether the warmth is a pattern or just a pulse. Ask yourself the questions that actually matter. Are they respecting my boundaries? Not just admiring them from a distance? Are they accepting responsibility in a way that names what they actually did? Are they changing consistently on ordinary days? Are they behaving differently even when there is no reward, no reunion, no access being offered in return? That last question may be the most revealing of all, because a person who only becomes kind when kindness might win you back is showing you a transaction, not a transformation. Now let us name something tender and honest. When the narcissistic person suddenly seems interested again, you may feel a powerful pull to prove your worth, to show them what they missed, to become so impressive, so healed, so desirable that they finally understand the mistake they made. I want to challenge that pull, not because it is shameful, but because it is a cage. The belief that being chosen by this person is the ultimate validation is the exact belief that kept you small. It places the final say about your worth in the hands of someone who already demonstrated they could not hold it carefully. You do not need to be rechosen by the person who could not see you the first time. Your worth was never on trial in their court. So let us rebuild the foundation, because this is the part that actually sets you free. Your value does not come from being wanted by someone who once discarded you. It comes from your own self-respect, from your emotional stability, from your autonomy, your ability to stand inside your own life without needing another person to confirm that you exist. It comes from your purpose, from the relationships that treat you as fully human, from the quiet, steady way you learn to treat yourself. That kind of worth cannot be handed to you by someone's sudden interest, and it cannot be taken away by someone's neglect. As we come toward the end, I want to gather everything we have explored into one clear truth. The most important moment is not the moment when a narcissistic person realizes your value. The most important moment is the one where you realize that your value never depended on their recognition. Because here is what you now understand deeply, in a way you cannot ununderstand. Someone can recognize your importance and still be completely incapable of giving you a healthy relationship. Someone can miss you and still repeat every harmful pattern that hurt you in the first place. Someone can fear losing you without ever becoming capable of loving you safely. These are not contradictions. They are simply the truth about what recognition is and what it is not. Recognition is not repair. Longing is not love. Fear of loss is not the ability to keep you well. So if you are waiting for the moment they finally understand what they had, I want to offer you something better than that moment. I want to offer you your own life back, the version of you that no longer studies their face for signs of change, the version of you that trusts observable behavior over beautiful words, the version of you that protects your boundaries, not as a test for them, but as a gift for yourself, the version of you that has stopped measuring your worth through another person's reaction. You are allowed to let their realizations stay their business. You are allowed to stop being the audience for a transformation that may never come. You are allowed to walk forward whether or not they ever understand. Because the freedom you are looking for was never going to arrive in a message from them. It was always going to arrive the day you stopped needing it. Watch behavior over time. Trust patterns over moments. Protect your boundaries even when it is hard. And never again let the size of someone's reaction decide the size of your worth. You do not need them to realize how important you are. You need to realize it. And then you need to build a life that reflects it. If this reached something real in you, subscribe and stay close to this space. Not because you are broken, but because you are healing. And healing is easier when you are reminded again and again that your worth was never up for negotiation. Keep going. Keep choosing yourself. The clearest, calmest, strongest version of you is already on the way.